Welcome in to another edition of New Track Record. Hello, I'm Caleb Hatch alongside Justin Kinney. Hello, Justin.
Hello, Caleb. How are you?
Doing well. A little worn out this week. Not sure why, but it's the summer. It's like the dog days of summer, right?
This is the dog days of summer, and when we talk about the sports world, this is arguably the deadest week of the year, right? You get Home Run Derby, All-Star Game, neither of which I really care about. Wednesday, there's absolutely nothing going on, and then you get baseball again starting on Thursday. But in terms, football's still a ways off, basketball's done, hockey's done, baseball taking a break. In terms of the major sports, it's dead time, but at the very least, we have IndyCar racing for 3 consecutive weekends.
Yes, and a very busy time as we will start with our recap of the Honda Indy Toronto, the return for the first time since 2019. Also dive into a preview of the doubleheader at Iowa Speedway coming up this weekend as we record on Thursday afternoon. And more into contract drama with Alex Palou, of course. How could we forget that?
The gift that keeps on giving.
Yes, and a few little updates here and there, but it seemed to largely be a distraction with not a whole lot of new news until after the race last Sunday. So we start with our 3 takeaways. And before that, though, let's get into Scott Dixon, the GOAT, win number 52 in open wheel competition. You have to remember one of those is in kart. The other 51 are with Chip Ganassi Racing, mostly with Target branding in IndyCar / IRL in his career. Now, quick trivia question. The one non-Chip Ganassi win, do you know the team and the race and the year?
Did he race for Pac West?
Yes, that's the team.
I'm going to say Mid-Ohio.
Nope, is a track that is defunct.
Oh, that narrows it down. Is it an oval?
Yes.
Is it Nazareth?
Yes.
There you go.
And the year?
The year, 1996.
Scott Dixon?
I'm going way off.
Yeah.
He's not that old.
No.
2000 and I'm trying to think. 2006?
No. Earlier.
2002.
2001. Took you a bit, but you got there.
I did. Well,
you got there.
It just feels like the guy's been around forever.
It does. And what is it now? 18 years with consecutive with a race win.
You knew it was inevitable this year. He was going to get a win at some point, right?
And Toronto seemed like the obvious choice for a lot of people. Yes, Penske and Andretti historically have had really good street course programs. Penske a no-show for the most part over the weekend. Andretti obviously strong with Colton Herta. Not that that was a surprise. We expected that. But Scott Dixon, once he got to the front, you thought he's not going to give it up. But tying up Mario Andretti with 52 career American open wheel racing wins, obviously a very impressive feat, and puts him right back in the thick of the championship chase in IndyCar. So with that, let's just start with our 3 takeaways. And I will start with Scott Dixon, and I will say Scott Dixon is still very much a championship contender.
Very much so. I mean, when you look at who's in this race and you still feel like, what would you say, 6 drivers? I mean, maybe 7 when you throw in Scott McLaughlin. I just don't know past that. Colton Herta, 97 points down?
Yeah, he's too far back. But I would say, yeah, you can easily go to Scott McLaughlin as being in the running because he has multiple wins. So if you've shown that you can win multiple races already, I would say you definitely have to be in the conversation on the point standings.
Or you don't have to win a single race like Alex Palou is right now.
True.
And sitting in third. So, but yeah, it was a great win for Scott Dixon to tie Mario. Reasonably dominant fashion. He didn't really drive away from Colton Herta. It was just kind of a steady 2 or 3 second lead through majority of the race once he got the lead in the pit cycles. So just an impressive drive, just vintage Scott Dixon, right? Nothing flashy, nothing exciting, just gets to the front, drives, doesn't put a wheel wrong, dominates, and gets the win. And now it puts Scott Dixon in 5th in points, tied with Joseph Newgarden with 307 points, 44 points behind
Correct.
Marcus Ericsson.
Correct. And I think you look at that top 7 with McLaughlin 77 points back. That's a lot, but it's been made up before. Ryan Hunter-Reay came from, I think, 75 down. Dixon's come back from 68 or 69 down in the past. So that is possible, but you're on the very far edge, and you're going to have to be really consistent in getting top fives and podiums and probably pick up another win or two. But with how it's been this year, outside of Newgarden, no one's really come away with a huge chunk of wins. Yes, McLaughlin has 2, but he had such a rough patch in between those 2 for the most part. So Scott Dixon, he's been consistent. He's been hanging around, gets that win. I think he's very much still a championship contender. And the Ganassi team, I mean, look, they got 3 in the top 4, considering Newgarden and Dixon are tied. So very impressive effort by the team over the course of the weekend.
And, with all the drama that was last week, of course, Scott Dixon's going to come in and show no matter the distractions in our team, I'm going to come out and I'm going to put together a perfect race by and large and show that not only is this team still competing week in and week out, but, oh yeah, by the way, Scott Dixon is still a man to be reckoned with on track, winning for the 18th consecutive year?
Yes.
Yeah, pretty impressive.
Very impressive. All right, what's your first takeaway?
First takeaway of this race, and let's talk about the event in general. First time since 2019 we're at Toronto, and I think we saw in the lead up to Sunday a lot of guys, 12, 13 guys, first time at Toronto. 3 of those having big issues. Callum Ilott on Friday. Grosjean on Saturday, and someone else that
Kirkwood
qualifying as well. Yeah, so it's a short track. It's a short street circuit. It barely takes a minute around.
Palou as well.
Yeah, Palou had and he recovered well with the top 6. But in terms of this track and how it raced, there wasn't exactly a plethora amount of passing, particularly up front. But it's that track that you're always anticipating something's going to happen. And the race was a lot cleaner than I anticipated it being, especially after the early caution. I go, okay, here we go.
Yeah.
And never really had too many incidents after that.
The fact that you went outside of that early caution, you went basically the first half of the race caution free was surprising. But obviously cautions precautions, as they say, that happened in the second half of the race.
Yeah. So, I thought it was a pretty solid, entertaining race. It may not have had the drama that we thought it would, considering how Friday and Saturday went. But, NBC said on Peacock that it was a grandstand sellout. It was the largest crowd that Toronto's had since the late 90s at Toronto. We've always kind of looked at this race as, does it ever come back after the pandemic? It has. Now we look forward and think this is, a positive future for the race itself. It's still kind of funky with the pit road and all the turns and twists there. And, you talk about who is P1, Pato O'Ward, that, had the front pit spot and his team couldn't see him coming around the corner. And he had to tell him when he was at the pedestrian bridge and coming in. So it's not ideal, but it's quirky, and I think it's a solid venue. Of course, IndyCar needs to be racing in Canada at least once throughout the course of the season. So it was nice to see Toronto back, and hopefully it has a future.
Estimated crowd of 50,000. Now, that's over the weekend.
Yeah, there's not really a lot of seating around the track, really. So it's not conducive to a big crowd sitting in grandstands.
And I will challenge the whole... this is the biggest crowd since the 90s. I'm sorry. They clearly had more in the early 2000s back when Molson was a part of the event. They had a lot more grandstands.
Right. So, just that fact. So,
while I am glad to see the event back, and the grandstands that were set up looked full, and I believe that grandstand tickets for Sunday were at least close, if not sold out, I will buy that. However, there were very few grandstands that are set up, and everything I've read that actual grandstand capacity is somewhere between like 10 and 15,000. That's not that many people.
Right.
And this track, I mean, I get they haven't had a race in a couple years, but it lacked kind of the polish and kind of the sharpness that I would have expected. Like just looking at the circuit and how things were put together.
Well, it's a circuit that, every street course is like this, but even more so Toronto. There's asphalt and there's concrete and there's
I'm not talking about
all that stuff.
The street I'm not talking about
You're just
that.
talking about the event itself?
Just how it looked on Peacock. Like it looked like it was kind of cobbled together.
Okay.
So I don't know if this is just a case of you've been away for a couple years. The stuff was obviously in storage, like it's stored at a site.
Right.
But I was surprised at the lack of banners, on
that is
some
true.
of the walls.
Yeah.
And just polish. So we'll see. I would assume it's back next year. I don't have doubts after how this event went, but I think there's a lot of room to grow, I guess is how I look at it.
And unfortunately for Exhibition Place, where the race takes place, there's not a lot of room for growth.
No.
It's just a lot of development. I mean, if you go back 20 years and watch this race and compare it to 2022, the development around Exhibition Place has just been insane, and that's kind of been one of the issues of the viability of this race going forward, is the fact that they're kind of running out of room.
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily saying, oh, it's the promoter's fault for this. I'm saying Exhibition Place, Toronto officials work together to make this the best event possible.
Right.
Because I don't know how much support they're getting from the city itself to make this event, as good as it can be. I guess that is my concern with it. And I think it is imperative that IndyCar has at least one race in Canada. I think ideally you have 2 or 3. You have one in Western Canada, maybe even one in the Montreal area or something. I mean, there are tracks in Canada, mind you. Yes. Now, obviously with the street circuit, you have harsh winters in Canada. It's been a couple years, so it was rough, but they made the circuit work. It did not present itself as clean and as polished as I would have expected. I'm not saying it needs to look like an F1 street circuit. That's not what I'm saying. But it looked more cobbled together than I would have expected.
Hopefully they can shake off the rust and present a more polished atmosphere for 2023. But what would be your second point, Mr. Hatch?
All right, second takeaway. Let's talk Alex Palou. So after the weekend, he had a lot of issues. One, he's got to face the media bullpen, and there was a crowd, of course.
There was a lot more people than
huge
usual.
Crowd. NBC actually showed up. I mean, that's not something they typically do with reporters. But so he faced that. He had a practice crash. He had qualifying issues, right, in the qualifying session, where do they ever determine what that was?
I don't remember hearing about it.
But so his car stopped on track, right?
Yeah,
so
there was an issue.
There was an issue. So you have all that combined. You start all the way back in 22nd, basically setting yourself up for a disaster of a weekend after everything that came out earlier in the week, and to salvage a 6th place. To me, I mean, that's really impressive. You're 3rd in the point standings. You're very much in the championship hunt with getting that top 6 finish, and all the distraction and everything, and to have the tough qualifying spot and still to put together a really, really solid result. I mean, I guess I have to say kudos.
I would think so. I think that's how championships are won. And, he did it last year, and he's the only driver in the top 8 or 9 that is in points that still doesn't have a win. Doesn't even have a pole this year.
37 points back. I mean, he's very much in the chase.
If he can get a couple wins, he could win the championship. He could maybe win the championship with only one victory at this point. Who knows? But it's a testament to him and that team, quite honestly, to rally around and even facing some early adversity in the weekend to come home in 6th. And, I don't think we got really any true answers over the weekend in terms of the situation. If anything, we have more questions. But at least for this weekend, or this past weekend in Toronto, and this weekend at Iowa, Alex Palou's in the seat, and I feel like maybe he at least carries out the rest of the season at this point with Ganassi, unless things really hit the fan.
Yeah, I think, look, if he finishes out the season, which we expect as things play out, he'll have every opportunity to win the championship. And look, there are some funny things that happened on the way there. I think there's a story, Marshall Pruitt tweeting out the 2 IndyCar teams on the same charter flight from Indy to Toronto, Aaron McLaren SP and Chip Ganassi Racing, go figure. But he goes on to say, the good thing here is the men and women who work on the cars are tight and friendly, so there's no drama to be found among the crews. And that's exactly right. I mean, look, yes, there's drama between Zach Brown and Chip Ganassi and Alex Palou, but the crews, I mean, they have a job to do. They want to win races. They want to do as best they can. And it didn't seem to be an issue beyond just the media talking about it over the course of the weekend.
I agree. I feel like, I when it came down to it, the teams and drivers went to work. And, while the media, and I understand because this is all really what's been talked about the last couple of weeks, want to continue to harp on it and stuff, professionals are able to put stuff aside and focus on the task at hand. And at least those teams and drivers were able to do it at Toronto.
Oh, and how could I forget? There was apparently other drama, and I'm not an expert on this stuff, but apparently his management bought up, like his social team bought up a YouTube account
that has like 150,000 followers.
Yes, and then scrubbed it, and then it was gone just as quick as they had bought it up because people pointed it out online, and it's wild how many things happened. Again, this is all leading up to the race weekend. All this happened, and
it's just not like a huge deal, but at this point, Alex Palou's putting a lot of trust in people in this, whatever management team this is and who it involves and all that with, trying to develop fake social media accounts for him. And it was a YouTube channel that Alex Palou's team would put out videos of him and stuff that had like a couple hundred views, but he had supposedly 150,000 followers or something on this. It was basically bogus. And I would blame his team, his management team, quote unquote, for a fair amount of this Ganassi McLaren drama as well. So I don't know where Alex Palou goes from here, to be honest. I don't know where he's racing next year. All indications are with McLaren somewhere, but I do feel like Alex Palou is being manipulated by certain elements of that management team that are maybe doing things the wrong way than what Alex would like them to be.
His management said in a statement to Nathan Brown of the Indy Star, they're not aware of any official Alex Palou page on YouTube and certainly not related to it in any way. So that was after the page was uncovered and then scrubbed. So no such thing came from us. So not from his team, but very bizarre that all of this happens around the same time, but I guess that's how these things go, right?
I mean, the fact that he's got a management team, like I'm sure plenty of drivers have, managers and agents and stuff, but, to have quote unquote team, work, I don't know, it just seems kind of weird. I don't see very many other IndyCar drivers with this mysterious leadership team behind them, kind of.
They'll have
buttons behind. They'll
have a contract out for marketing and with social media and video
for sure. But it's just kind of weird that look, Alex Palou's won a championship. I'm not taking that away from him, but in terms of the established drivers in this series, he's kind of on the younger end of that, and to have this drama going on is just kind of bizarre. And I'm just wondering how much has been created and fermented by this mysterious team that's supposedly in his corner.
Yeah, let's quickly just get to that management team. So Monaco Increased Management, or MIM, that is the name of it that he has, and they've worked with other drivers. I mean, it's not new for them, but they're based in Monaco. They have about a half dozen people. Pascal Wehrlein, who raced 2 seasons in F1, has been part of their team, so they have experience with drivers. They've worked with Palou for a while, and now you just kind of wonder because they want to get him to F1 is the understanding. So this from Nathan Brown in the Star. MIM CEO is Salvatore Gandolfo. He was the racing executive at the time, was helping run European Junior Formula juggernaut Campos Racing. So they race in I think F2 or F3. Definitely heard of him. I think Connor Daly raced for them at one point.
Okay.
But launched a bid with partner Adrian Campos to join F1 as Monaco F1 Racing Team. But that project did not get off the ground, and Palou and Wehrlein likely would have been the drivers for that. So there are a couple other advisors as part of this team, and they're not well known in the IndyCar paddock. In fact, Brown says, Who's managing Alex was an all too common question I got in Toronto. Word finally circulated that MIM had recently been unable to agree to new terms with ex-IndyCar driver Roger Yasukawa, Palou's manager. Now, we knew that.
Right.
So that just makes it, I guess, all the more weird.
All the more confusing. And, if your goal is to get to Formula One, that's fine enough, and that's great, and all that stuff. And if your management team is working towards that, that's great. But majority of drivers don't last long in Formula One, right? So after your Formula One career is over, whether it's 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, and you want to keep racing, if you've pissed off and burned all bridges, or the majority of bridges in IndyCar, then you're not going to be going back there. And how many drivers do we see coming from Formula One to IndyCar? If Alex Palou, if this scorched earth policy of, creating fake accounts and pissing off your owners and signing multiple contracts and all this, if you leave this path of destruction in your wake, departing IndyCar, good luck getting a ride when you come back.
And back to that YouTube page that's since been scrubbed. So the contact email for it was traced to ex-Team USA gymnast Shawn Johnson. Yeah, you remember her?
Really?
So they're the new lifestyle media company, Family Made Media. So that's the weird tie-in. So again,
so weird.
They deny any involvement with that page, but who knows?
Yeah, right.
Anyway, let's move on. What's your second takeaway?
I have a second point. Let's talk Alexander Rossi a little bit. It was another weekend that you thought, okay, could Rossi potentially get a victory for the first time in 3 years? Qualified well, showed speed and pace in practice, and then runs into an incident with Felix Rosenqvist and finishes 23rd. And Rosenqvist ends up third. And once again, steering wheel knocked out of Rossi's hands. They talked a little bit about on the Peacock broadcast about the custom grip, and if it's not, formulated exactly to Rossi, something going on. But I think you and I were texting back and forth, on Sunday about these incidents. And last race, it was Grosjean and Rossi, right? Toronto, it's Rossi and Rosenqvist. I think what we're seeing is, over time, that drivers are racing Alexander Rossi the way he races them. And there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with how Rossi races. There's nothing wrong with how other drivers race Rossi. But it's that give and take. And with Rossi, elbows out type driving, that's great and all, but you also need to expect that from other drivers. And Felix Rosenqvist, I don't think did anything wrong in that situation. He had the inside and got a little loose coming out and tapped, Rossi, and he ended up into the tire barrier.
And it's the same situation, just the roles reversed between Rossi and Grosjean at Mid-Ohio.
Yeah.
Rosenqvist hit a bump, overcorrected, lost the steering wheel, contact with Rossi. Rossi's into the wall. And like you said, I fully agree. Look, it was a racing incident. Rossi was on the receiving end instead of the giving end, like he was at Mid-Ohio. And just like Roman Grosjean's going to be raced harder than anyone else in the field, Rossi has set himself up where he also, because he is more of a no holds barred, no give or take when it comes to position, he's also going to be that. Now he's not to the level that Grosjean is, I don't think, at least reputation wise, among other drivers in the series. But they didn't call a penalty at Mid-Ohio, right? On that,
correct. And I'm glad
they didn't call a penalty here.
I'm glad for the consistency, right? We talked so much about race control and inconsistency with calls. Look. If it wasn't a penalty with Rossi and Grosjean, then it shouldn't have been a penalty for Rossi and Rosenqvist, and thankfully it wasn't.
Yeah, consistent there, and also an actual clean race start.
Yes, it was, and halfway decent lineup, and I thought it was a good start. But going kind of back to Rossi, and we said, it's a benefit for him because he knows where he's going to race next year at McLaren. But I think you're seeing him, especially with Felix Rosenqvist, who has something to prove to McLaren because he wants to be an IndyCar. He doesn't want to be bumped to Formula E. And I think as this season goes on, you're going to be racing more and more desperate drivers that are looking for positive results and positive moves and maybe more desperate driving. And I think that can be a negative for Rossi because he's not really driving for 2023, where there's going to be several drivers on the grid for the rest of the season that are, and maybe are going to race a little bit more haphazardly than what Rossi expects. But And again, I think it goes back is you give it out and you're going to receive it as well. And I think Rossi has, and not saying it's a negative, but he races guys a certain way, and guys have adjusted to race him that very same way.
Yeah, I think that's entirely fair. I mean, you have to race with guys and gals how the competition presents itself.
And it's a car that's conducive to, handling contact too. So, especially road and street courses this car can handle it, So you're going to see more beating and banging, and on a small track like Toronto with not a lot of room and runoff, you're going to have those issues. Unfortunately, Rossi was a victim, which, he shouldn't have been a race ending incident for Alexander Rossi. It was a bump. He should have been able to corral it and continue. Fortunately, he didn't.
All right, my third takeaway, we have basically lambasted, right? Is that
lambasted?
The word? Yeah, lambasted. Yes. This team, the entire season.
Yes, we have. I know you're going to talk about.
But Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan Racing.
Hey, congratulations, guys.
Top 5 finish for Graham Rahal, 4th place. Also, Christian Lundgaard starting 10th, so a great qualifying position, and finishing 8th. Unfortunately, Jack Harvey started 13th, but finished 19th. But again, all 3 cars, decent qualifying. Graham qualified 14th. He was a legit Fast 6 contender, but as always, there's shenanigans leaving people out in qualifying sessions. But again, I don't know how to fix it. You just have to put together a better time faster before anything happens on track. But overall, they had qualifying speed, and apparently a recent Sebring test kind of helped them out here. But for Graham Rahal to carve his way through the field, starting midfield as opposed to toward the back of the pack, great drive by him. Not that we expected anything less. We thought this guy could be a podium contender. I think from the first practice session, the speed was legitimate, and it was just a great result for the team and for Christian Lundgaard. I mean, he continues to pull away in the rookie race. David Malukas now 20 points back of Lundgaard, and Lundgaard, his last 3 races has gone 10th, 11th, and 8th. So he's been on it. And while Malukas has gotten, I think, a lot more attention, because I think he had the 2 fastest race laps this past weekend at Toronto, and he was also coming off a 9th at Mid-Ohio for his first top 10 finish of the season. But Lundgaard has been very consistent. He's been solid. 16th, he's actually ahead of Helio Castroneves by 10 points in the standings. And Graham Rahal moving up to 13th with his best result of the season, led some laps as well. And look, they're getting there. Is anyone going to finish in the top 10 in points? I don't know, unless they have an amazing doubleheader weekend.
Right.
I don't know if they're going to leapfrog several cars ahead of them. But it looks like Graham Rahal's season is back on track, and also the team as a whole finally had some pace for a weekend.
Well, it definitely helped, and it was good to see at least one week, and who knows if this is going to continue into this weekend at Iowa, next weekend on the road course at Indy. But at the very least, it was a great try by Graham Rahal. He was able to qualify in the top 15, and for Graham, it feels like a victory almost in itself, because he puts himself behind the 8 ball so much on qualifying day, and he legitimately showed pace. I think it was really one of those lost opportunities, as much as we're praising this team, is if Graham Rahal was able to qualify in the Firestone Fast 6, maybe he's competing for a victory, because that car was fast and led 6 laps at Toronto, but was able to bring it home in 4th and get a top 5. But man, if that car qualifies closer to the top of the grid, we could be having, at the very least, a top 3 finish. So it was good, but still some room to grow. And I think you got to like what you've seen with Christian Lundgaard. You mentioned it, a guy that's not wrecking cars. He's a rookie. He's still learning a lot, but to be in the position he is in 16th, and he's got 3 top 10s and 10 starts this year. I mean, just a smooth drive is kind of what you want to see out of a rookie driver, particularly for a guy that, really didn't have a lot of seat time here in North America before coming over.
Yeah, and the first Dane to ever start the Indy 500. I mean,
yeah,
he's got that on his resume.
Yep, absolutely. My number 3?
Yes.
Let's talk about Honda. I don't want to say Honda dominance or Chevy struggles for the second straight week. And I know Scott McLaughlin won at Mid-Ohio, but what was it, the bottom 7 finishers at Mid-Ohio were Chevys, and you look at this past weekend, and 7 of the top 8 finishers were Hondas. So is this something where we're looking at more of a trend, or was it, back-to-back kind of crappy weekends for Chevy? Do we expect them to bounce back this weekend? Of course, with Joseph Newgarden dominating Iowa the way he has, you'd feel positive. But, Honda, at least with their road and street package the last couple weeks, have had to avoid issues, something that Chevy has not been able to do. And they've been able to show pace, which I don't think Chevy has been able to do consistently.
Yeah, I would expect Chevy to reset this weekend and have a dominating performance personally. But it was a surprise to see how much Honda cleaned things up. I mean, they had the top 2. You look at the top 10, there were, 1, 2, 3 Chevys. Yeah, 7 of the top 10 were Honda. So for once, Honda finally gets a win on a Honda-sponsored event.
Yeah.
To kind of turn the tables, where Chevy took all the other Honda-sponsored events and their home race in Detroit as well.
Interesting how this goes back and forth. I mean, that's what the excitement with the OEMs is, and that's why we hope eventually we can add a third, and we'll have some news later on that. Or I don't know if it's news or an update of where things stand, but it continues to be exciting when these two OEMs battle back and forth, because they're the only two we got, and neither is able to really consistently beat the other. So week to week, race to race, it's exciting to watch who has the edge.
Yeah, and we'll see how it plays out. Doubleheader at Iowa, and look, Honda is more content to have the Indy 500 win over the season championship.
They've got what they wanted, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Chevy's just trying to save some sort of face if they can win either manufacturer's championship or the season championship. But the crown, the creme de la creme award, right, is the 500.
All right, that wraps up our 3 things. More notes on Toronto and other thoughts. Marcus Ericsson, another top 5. Gets it done. Simon Pagenaud, who probably, if he qualified better, would have had a better result, finishing in 7th. And Joseph Newgarden, I mean, to finish in 10th, you'd say, oh, yeah, it's okay. But after he had issues earlier in the weekend and then finishing in 10th, I mean, Penske overall, yes, 9th and 10th, and then Will Power back in 15th. Power's never able to move forward, really.
Yeah, and Newgarden, started 2nd?
Third,
yeah, so he was up there.
And McLaughlin 6th, so Penske surprisingly not as competitive as you would have expected over the course of the weekend. And outside of that, I mean, David Malukas, 12th, another solid run for him, and he is definitely showing between his speed, first a Fast 6 appearance for him. That was not his first, but a Fast 6 appearance for him. He was trying to make a 10 for 10 on poles, but couldn't come through as he started in 5th. But again, a great result for him and that team as they possibly expand, or who knows what could happen with him. He might be on the radar of some other teams.
I don't know, to me, if he's done enough to be on the radar for another team. I feel like he's not going to be a top option for anybody, but you could see plan B, C, or even D include David Malukas for some team. We don't know if Dale Coyne Racing with HMD, which is family owned by the Malukas family, if they're going to stay together. If HMD branches off as their own independent team, does HMD take their support with David Malukas if he goes to another team? A lot of questions, but he's a guy that I feel as a rookie has done everything he's needed to do and stay out of trouble. And, just the single top 10 in the 10 starts that he has had. But I feel like he's bringing, cars home in one piece and showing improvement from one weekend to the next. And as a rookie, that's really all you can expect. And
Colton Herta, one other note, got the pole, obviously didn't win the race, but was able to get a solid result.
Despite vision issues.
Yes.
So
his sock.
Yeah, his head sock got gnorkled, if that's a word.
Yeah.
And was not holding his hair back, and his hair was getting into his eyes. So maybe we'll see a buzzed head Colton Herta when we open up action at Iowa, because it didn't cause any grave issues, but the hair was giving him trouble there during the race.
Yeah, and he was able to fight through it. This is not the first time he's had some weird issues. Didn't he have another issue earlier this season with something in the car. His hose became detached.
Yeah, it was a warm race. I can't remember what it was, but at least we've not had any incidents of belts coming undone.
Yeah. Ugh.
Which is always exciting when you hear that on the radio.
Yeah. No, thank you to that. All right. Other notes from the weekend. We didn't have a TV rating because, well, it wasn't on TV, but NBC basically said to Nathan Brown, the results were in line with what we expected. Okay.
Whatever that was expectation.
Whatever that is, we're not going to know. Other stuff on Alex Palou over the weekend. That Zach Brown has apparently never seen Palou's contract, operated under the assumption that he's an impending free agent, that from the AP. And then Felix Rosenqvist with some interesting post-race comments talking about Palou. At the moment, it doesn't sound like he's going to race at all. Yeah, it's up to lawyers and stuff. Honestly, it's not my business at all. I think, honestly, it hasn't really changed anything. This whole deal went down months ago. I didn't know all the details of it that I know now, but nothing has actually changed. I think if Zach was sure I was going to Formula E, he would have already said it. I'm going to take that chance. If there's a chance for me to be here next year, I'm going to try to prove I can do it.
I don't mind asking people directly involved with the situation what they think. I don't like the asking of questions that don't pertain to the drivers about outside issues. So I think it was Joseph Newgarden, Graham Rahal, and somebody else that was in a press conference. Was it Rossi?
I think.
Could have been, because it was the top three in a practice, I think, were in there, and that makes sense. And media are asking them what they think of the situation and blah, blah, blah. And I just I don't know. Who cares what they think? And they're not involved in it. So what's it matter what drivers think about another situation? It's just kind of lazy journalism to me. There's plenty of other interesting things you can ask these guys other than, what do you think about what's going on? It's like, what do you expect them to say? And there was kind of some stifled laughter and looked at each other, and then there was no comments, which, that's what they should say. And I feel like anybody who is asked, be like, that's their business. I don't really care.
I will say asking Rosenqvist about it, though, is pertinent.
Rosenqvist is pertinent, yes. And I don't know if the Palou deal, in terms of the drama, is directly tied to Felix Rosenqvist. What is tied to him is if indeed Alex Palou is with McLaren, then how does that affect Felix Rosenqvist? So I don't really mind the question there, but when you're asking random drivers after a practice what they think about what's going on at Ganassi and McLaren, I'm just kind of like, I really don't care.
Then another nugget on Palou from Jenna Fryer. McLaren won't know its lineup for 2023. This is talking F1 until the Palou saga is resolved. Details on the Daniel Ricciardo seat and his future in the story below. And apparently Ricciardo has an option he has to decide by September. And
now Sebastian Vettel's rumored to be potentially on the radar of McLaren.
That seemed to already be squashed.
But I mean, was it squashed by anybody official or just Vettel?
I think by Vettel.
I mean, I don't know. I don't believe what anybody says anywhere at this point about contracts, right? I mean, Chip Ganassi was pretty confident that Alex Palou wasn't going anywhere. Weird things tend to happen in the motorsports world.
Yes, that is absolutely true.
And if Daniel Ricciardo decides that he does not want to be in that second Formula One seat for 2023, it opens up all sorts of possibilities.
Again, Alex Palou, right?
Or Pato O'Ward, or Sebastian Vettel, or Oscar Piastri.
Yeah, all options, legitimate
all
options.
Of them.
Colton Herta.
Right?
I mean, if anyone were to let that happen, I would say it would be Michael Andretti, knowing that he can't do anything about it.
That would be the ultimate Zach power move, is to snake Colton Herta away from Andretti and put him in an F1 seat, knowing full well that Andretti's trying to start his own Formula One team. But he's tested.
True.
We expect him to be in an FP1 at some point, the latter half of the year.
Was impressive, according to what everyone had to say.
Oh.
And speaking of Formula One, a former Formula driver is now in IndyCar, Roman Grosjean. Tony DeZeno pointing this out. So Grosjean has been it at all 4 street courses this year. You texted me that as well.
You're like, has he crashed at all of them?
And I was
crashed at all 4. Yep. Nothing if not consistent.
Yes. And it has been largely consistently disappointing season for him with Andretti. All right. Any other things, any other notes you have for Toronto?
No, I am sold. What else we got?
All right. Well, with that, we'd love for you to interact with us. You can find us at newtrackrecordpodcast.com. While you're there, subscribe to the email list so you never miss an episode. Also, check out the store. We have stickers and t-shirts for sale. Shout out to Andrew, who just bought a shirt. So thanks for your support. You can also support us on Patreon, patreon.com/newtrackrecord.
You know, I had never been on Patreon until like yesterday, and I started clicking around there, and I looked up New Track Record Podcast, and it can tell you how many subscribers and how much money they get per month and the different tiers, because I always listen to podcasts that always talk about Patreon, and I'm like, I wonder how much money they really get. And some of these more popular ones that I listen to. So I was clicking around there. It's the first time I've ever been on Patreon. Yeah,
thanks to Rob, Xavier, and others who are patrons. Again, 4 tier levels, starting with as little as $1 a month, so it's very cheap to join. We appreciate your support.
I think the $10 tier helps me, as it says, feed my rich energy habit.
Yes,
which,
that is correct.
If you're a long-time listener of this podcast, know exactly what we're talking about.
That is exactly correct. Also, you can find us on social media. Our Twitter handle, IndyCar Podcast. Same handle on Instagram, on Facebook. Search for us and like New Track Record. And you can email us, newtrackrecordpodcast@gmail.com. And as always, listen to us on your favorite podcasting platform, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Podbean, and so many others, all for free. Okay, mailbag time. And as always, we have plenty to get to over the course of the past week, and getting back to some stuff from a week ago, talking about Alex Palou stuff. This from Nick J. Fletcher. I've heard that Chip Ganassi had just been signed by McLaren Racing as a reserve driver. Rumor has it he's getting FP one time in Spa, so Chip Ganassi has my vote. That's on the poll of Chip versus Zach.
Which was very interesting results that we had, by the way.
Do you have those?
No.
Oh, I thought you were going to go into the results.
No, but I can say it was like 70-30 Team Zach is what it was. Yeah, it was very
much
telling.
in favor.
Interesting. I don't know if Zach just kept voting with his burner accounts, but it was interesting.
This from Jordan_Willman. So we talked about last week on, and you tweeted this about teams making up fake quotes for press releases. He says, as someone who works in the PR comms field, this can come backfire on your organization with legal action and massive fines. Anyone saying this is normal has no clue what they're talking about.
Yeah, there was a lot of feedback based on this, and that it's not unduly uncommon that marketing and communications entities make up quotes from people, but they're always signed off on.
Yes,
right?
That was the part that seemed to be, at least according to Alex Palou, lacking here.
Yes.
This from Daniel SCM 2004. The teams are intentionally creating drama ahead of a Peacock-only race. Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah, that was the unfortunate part.
I didn't mind it. Look, I mean, we're probably going to Peacock talk. I watched it on delay, which I seemingly always do. The race was up within, I don't know, hour and a half of its completion. I tried to go in and see if I could watch it, quote unquote, live and then rewind it and start from the beginning, but you couldn't pause live either. So to me, I was like, I'm just going to wait.
They need the red button on the remote if you're a Sky Glass or Sky Q customer to watch
if you
in
know,
real time
you know.
and highlights. It's my favorite part.
Thanks, Martin Brundle.
No, that's Crofty.
Is it Crofty?
Yeah, that's Crofty.
Good job, Crofty. People that are listening that don't know what we're talking about are wondering what the hell are these guys talking about.
Yeah, if you watch F1, you know.
You watch Sky Sports.
Yes.
Yes.
DeGuerra says, look at Rosenqvist's statement in the press release when his new weird contract was announced. He would never, ever say or write anything like that. They're not even trying to make it seem like it's him. Yeah, true, but allegedly they sign off on these things.
Right. They're supposed to.
Scuba Steve 85. Just when you think Ganassi has 2 top caliber drivers for the future when Dixon retires. Yeah.
Thought so.
IndyCar DJ32 went hashtag Team Drama over Team Chip or Team Zach. Jeremy from HBG says hashtag Hate is Good or hashtag Indy Rivals is relevant again for the first time. I love that.
Yes.
I miss Indy Rivals. I use that hashtag whenever there's drama.
Here's the thing, too, and I know there was some discussion about this and this drama and, it's not unduly exciting or good for the series or it doesn't draw in new fans and all that stuff. But in this situation, I'm not caring about new fans. I'm caring about current fans that want an infusion of, dislike and hatred and drama and rivalry between two teams. And we really haven't had that pure, deep hatred between teams in quite some time. And I'm not worried about, in this case, it drawing more fans in or new fans. I'm talking about all of us who've been in the trenches watching this series for years on end going, man, can we get something that shakes the paddock up a little bit in terms of some, vitriol and tension? And dang it, we got it.
For once.
I'll take it. And hope it continues.
In back-to-back race weekends.
Yes. And I'm fine. And I can guarantee you Zach Brown is fine too. If McLaren comes out looking more and more like the villain team of IndyCar because they are able to tap into assets that nobody else in the paddock can, and that includes Team Penske, then I think he embraces it. He's all for it.
I don't think he really cares. And apparently Zach and Chip haven't gotten along for a bit.
I'm fine with it. I'm cool with it. Keep it going.
Run_Mark_Run. He was our boots on the ground in Toronto, sending us some pictures and commentary throughout the weekend. But he sent a picture. Nice weather, good crowd, $14 beers.
Whoa. Was it Molson at least?
I don't know. He did not specify.
Or Labatt's.
Did not specify. Labatt Blue, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. We get to rate the race. And how would you rate this one?
I went initially with a 7, and then I dropped it to a 6.5. I think it was good. I think there's tension always at Toronto. It was great to be back. The racing, particularly up front, was lacking.
Yes, I will go. You know what? I was going to go with a 7.5, but I'm going to reduce it to a 7 because I feel like I've rated every race this year a 7 or 7.5 outside of the Indy GP.
Yeah.
Because that was actually a very entertaining race, only because it was run in the rain,
right,
and dry and back and forth. I'm going to rant about something here, and
let's go.
I don't think people will be very well receiving of this. And if you disagree, please tweet us, email us, Facebook message, Instagram, snail mail, whatever. Let us know. But look, the racing has not been very good compared to what we were used to pre-aeroscreen era. Now, I am not saying to scrap the aeroscreen. Let me be very clear. That is not what I'm saying here. But what I am saying, the racing has not been as competitive, especially up front. Obviously, it's a lot harder to follow. You have the extra weight of the aero screen. They're working to work around that, I think, for next year.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have the hybrid unit, so that will add even more weight to the car. But the car needs some work. The racing, especially up front, has not been very competitive for a couple of years. We had a complete snoozer of a 500, in my opinion. And yes, 2021, the 500 was great. It's weird, though. It almost feels like the racing is somehow worse this year compared to last year. And it shouldn't be some significant difference because last year they had already had the aeroscreen for a season, so they had the data. Yes, it was limited because the 2020 schedule was limited, but I don't understand how it could drop that far. And you've pointed this out multiple times. Yes, IndyCar likes to claim they're the most diverse racing series, street course, road course, oval, but NASCAR is now next year going to have street course with Chicago. They have dirt with Bristol. They're going to have the Coliseum race. Obviously, they race all types of oval tracks.
Road courses.
I mean, you have to
short
do
ovals. They got mile and a halves. They got super speedways. They're checking more boxes than IndyCar does.
Yes. Now, IndyCar getting Iowa back on the schedule helps a lot with that. But you have 2 short oval tracks. You have a 1.5 mile track in Texas, and then you have IMS.
You have 1 effective super speedway. I don't really consider Indianapolis to be a super speedway.
It's its own thing.
It's its own category. But I agree. And look, there's a difference between parity and competition and actual parity on track or, exciting racing. We're not saying that IndyCar has become Formula One where only two or three teams win. That's not what we're saying. There's still parity in that respect. But on track is lacking in terms of excitement, in terms of passing, especially up front. And I understand that part of it is the aero screen. I understand that. I understand the weight of the car. But the fact of the matter is there's a problem and it needs solved. And if we're the only ones saying it, then so be it. But I think other people that just blindly continue to talk about IndyCar being the most competitive in the world, I think are mistaken. Now, I don't think it's the most competitive on race days than other series. I know the contrived green-white checker of NASCAR is derided by IndyCar fans, but take that away, and I'm still seeing more excitement in the closing laps of Cup races than I am IndyCar races over the last couple of years. That's just facts.
And people may disagree. That's fine.
And people may say, it's bumping and, so what? We saw plenty of bumping at Toronto.
Yeah.
We saw plenty of bumping in Mid-Ohio.
We did.
So don't come at us saying that Indy cars aren't beating and banging. Obviously not at the level of stock cars, but they're doing an Indy car. You know what I mean? And I feel like the movers and shakers in IndyCar know there's a problem, knows that the racing has taken a step back. Now, safety has taken a tremendous step forward.
Yes.
With the aero screen. And I would still make this decision every day of the week. I would still, yes, aero screen, and we'll take a step back with the racing for a couple of years. But it is something that needs to be addressed sooner rather than later.
All right, let's rattle through Rate the Race ratings. People submitted. DC Soda, 7. Only drama at the front was on pit sequences. Some good action throughout the field, though. But once again, Dixon winning means it was a bit boring.
Real quick,
yeah.
The reason why we hear so much about undercuts and overcuts is because there's lack of passing in the front.
True. And it worked for Dixon.
That's the storyline, right? That's what you have to focus on when, by and large, nobody can pass each other for the lead. That's what we hear in Formula One all the time. Why? Because there's not a lot of passing in front. And in fact, Formula One has had more passes up front than IndyCar has this year.
Really?
Yes. In terms of passes for the lead, in terms of passes, top 5, I can ring off more dramatic moments between leaders on track in Formula One this year than I can IndyCar.
If someone has the data, I'd love to see it.
Prove me wrong if you can.
Yeah. Hunter's Way 67, giving an 8. Another crazy Toronto race. Turn 3, there is awesome. Always good action at the end of Lakeshore. Just hope Green Sabri can figure out a way to get the old pit lane back to open up the turns 9, 10, 11 complex for some better runs into turn 1. Yes, agree there. Pit lane just was very funky, I guess is how I would describe it. Poet Shevchenko, Dixon made the IndyCar season official with a win. I give it a 9. Best street race of the year so far. Lots of drama leading into the race that showed and the promise of more to come. VK and Award even gave us an on-track pass for the lead. Yes, that is true. It was also off sequence. Jeremy from HBG, 8.5. The coverage being better, way fewer breaks. They held true to the 3-minute in-race breaks, by the way. Watching live,
it was nice. I mean, there was a solid 20 lap sequences with no breaks. It was very nice. It was the flow of the race felt a heck of a lot better. Now, we're not advocating this happens all the time on NBC.
No.
Okay, we're just saying it was nice on Peacock.
And Jeremy from HBG goes on to say, in the less shouty Kevin Lee 23 at the helm really added to what was a great experience. Personally, I like Kevin. I also like Lee Diffie. I miss Lee Diffie.
I like Lee's energy. Now, sometimes it can be a little contrived sometimes, especially late in races that aren't as exciting as he likes to try to make them out to be. But his job is to make things exciting. I think Lee Diffie's great.
Run_Mark_Run, 14 for the $14 beers at the track. Felt like a big crowd. Everything went pretty smoothly. Sightlines aren't great, but still nice to have the race back, hoping for 2023 and beyond. P. Gaynor 14 gave it an 8. Ironically, I think if there wasn't all the extra cautions after the Rossi incident, I think it would have been a crazier finish and better race because of fuel mileage. ECR had really played the strategy well until the gamble failed. Zach C 8771, I'll give it a 7. Happy to be back in Toronto after some doubt if it would ever return to the calendar. There's a little bit of lack of action at the front, but just enough intrigue throughout to keep it from being boring, probably a 6 or 6.5 with more commercials added. LOL. According to Sitch, gave it a 9. I'm Analog, gave it a 2 for Peacock. It kept airing out on my end. Race was a solid 8. The track looks painful to go around, though. BK Hickey, 10 plus. Sigdomer, absolute 10. Great race. Hunter J. Smith, 03, 8. Glad to see Toronto back. Broadcast and race were fantastic. Need a new pit lane, though. Perhaps create a stadium section. Go through BMO Field. LOL.
Don't see that in the budget.
No. Zaxi8771 adds, if Peacock means limited commercials like that every time, put all the races exclusively there. LOL. Obviously, he's kidding everyone. He's absolutely kidding. Finishing position that surprised people the most. FitJ1983 said Newgarden, just baffling that a season has been decided by uncharacteristic pit errors in strategy. And yes, he's won so many races, but like we've said, he's still not leading the points.
Very much feast or famine for the majority of the season for Joseph. So
in a look at the results of that poll, 35% said Newgarden, 33% Ray Hall, 21% Rossi, 11% said Lundgaard. The final results of that poll. This from Nick J. Fletcher. Some stats for Dixon, and this includes the 0304 Toyota disaster. Podium, 39% for his career. Laps led, 14%. Win, 16%. Average start, 6.7. Average finish, 7.2. Finish outside the top 6 in points 2 times. That was 0304. That would have been 04 because 2003 he won the title.
Right.
So he's done it again. Not that this is a surprise. And then Graham Rahal had this tweet. Tony DeZeno talking about how F1 and NASCAR have taken some risks. Graham says, Tony, be patient. I had the same concerns, but recently learned otherwise. Stay patient. They're on it. And Nick J. Fletcher says, I guess it's safe to say that Ducati is the third OEM. Graham brokered the deal after opening his Ducati dealership in Indy.
Obvious.
But yeah, what is Graham talking about?
Yeah, what do you feel he could be talking about? Are they going to try to take a swing at a unique venue of some sort? Do we expect some sort of radicalized changes to the body kits for next year?
Third OEM? Could it be?
I just don't know if that
a special event that they're adding.
Yeah, I don't know. But I think, look, I want IndyCar to think outside the box. I really do. But Formula One and NASCAR are in better financial positions to try something and absolutely whiff on. And I know some people were like, well, you know, Roger Penske's a billionaire, blah, blah, blah. Well, you don't become a billionaire by robbing Peter to pay Paul. He's not taking money out of other ventures to finance IndyCar and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So we're working with what that budget is, and it's substantially smaller than NASCAR and Formula One. It just is. So I feel like IndyCar can't take the risks that those two other entities do, but hopefully this tweet by Graham Rahal insinuates that something out of left field is coming to really kind of give some IndyCar folks some excitement after what we've seen with Formula One and their impact. And now next year we'll have 3 races in the United States, and Cup is racing in a Los Angeles Coliseum, and now they're going to race through the streets of Chicago, which none of us ever thought would ever happen ever. And maybe something happens to where it doesn't happen, and maybe it's one and done. But the fact that they've gotten this far is shocking in itself. So can IndyCar up the ante and maybe steal some headlines with some of their own surprising announcements?
Shevchenko adds on the reply to Graham's tweet, it will be a 2-mile super speedway located overseas with all the cars powered by the third OEM engine. Yeah, if they can check all those boxes at once, that would be great. And then one other entry on Rate the Race that I missed from Xavier Jackson on Twitter. Zave Jackson 32. The handle 8. Great racing strategy. Cautions kept it entertaining, and nice to see it back in Toronto. I think overall, yes, nice to be back in Toronto is the theme. And then one other tweet to get to: who leads the most laps this weekend at Iowa? And 500 Indy 1911 says, you heard it here first. An ECR car will win one of the races. Well, Connor's a strong qualifier there. They had a good test.
He was on pole there, right?
He was, Connor? Yeah, back at one of the races in 2020. So,
yeah,
I mean, it's a legitimate pick. And
I just have zero confidence in picking Ed Carpenter to win a race at this point.
Joseph Newgarden, 60%, though, of the vote. As far as leading the most laps, the field, 40%.
Well, he has led something over about 1,250 laps.
We'll get to that in our Iowa preview. But yes, it's not even close compared to what other people have done. As always, you can tweet us, Facebook message, Instagram message. You can email us, snail mail, as always.
Telegram.
Telegram. Part of the mailbag. Okay, news and notes time, plus a preview of Iowa to wrap things up. Some notes from the mailbag this week. I think we've both been very curious on Gateway and what to expect for the Bommarito 500 since they added NASCAR. The NASCAR race ran back in early June. And Chris Blair, right? That is his name. Chris Blair, the promoter of the event. He said, we're even with 2019 sales pre-pandemic and ahead of last year's sales. And last year, a major team sponsor that since left the series bought 1,000 tickets. And now they went away, so we're actually ahead. The NASCAR event helped draw lots of positive attention to the track. That courtesy of the Racer Mailbag and Marshall Pruitt. And the other note from the mailbag talking about the schedule, Marshall says, we're a month or more away from all the contracts being finalized, NBC having its broadcast options solidified and presented to IndyCar to lock down the calendar for 2023. I've heard what's coming could be nearly identical to what we have this year. Same early start, same pre-NFL end, 17 races again, the same tracks. I don't think that's a surprise. No. That's everything we've been hearing.
It's fairly late in the game, and I know it's only mid-July to be talking potential adds to the schedule without any type of leaks, right? As, any concrete, reports from a Marshall Pruitt or Nathan Brown about looking at Homestead or looking at anywhere else. And in the mailbag, too, the Milwaukee idea was fairly shot down by Marshall Pruitt, despite the, murmurings of that earlier this year. It doesn't sound like that's anywhere close to happening, if it ever does.
Yeah, Argentina.
Milwaukee.
Oh, Milwaukee? Yeah. Well, I don't think either one are going to be on the schedule next year.
No.
That's 2024 at the earliest. Okay, so that's a look at the mailbag. Okay, third OEM time, our favorite topic.
Oh, we need a nice jingle to play while we talk about third OEM.
Brought to you by Toyota.
Still.
Marshall Pruitt, Racer.com. Toyota still the strongest candidate to be the third supplier, according to Roger Penske. I didn't know this. He is the world's largest Toyota dealer. So that plays into the negotiations, I'm sure.
Doesn't
Penske
hurt.
Told Racer, we still have an ongoing conversation with Toyota. Bob Carter, who is Toyota's EVP of sales, is now retired. So we're working with the new management team there. But also, you can't snap your fingers and expect to have an engine manufacturer commitment right away. Obviously, this is not going to be for 2023 and probably not going to be for 2024. Apparently, there's a clause, Marshall says, that exists to require a new engine manufacturer to give notice to the series and existing suppliers 24 months in advance. That would push everything to 2025. However, Racer understands the notification window can be shortened if all parties agree on the matter. Penske says, we hope at some point we can make a deal with them. I'm not saying we have a deal at all, but we're working on it.
I feel like the worst thing, too, is when you have a management change as well. So, goals and, vision and priorities are going to be sometimes completely different or at least subtly changed between management regimes. So the fact that IndyCar was, negotiating with one chief of Toyota and now has to do it with somebody else, that can really set things back a little bit. Or maybe it helps in some ways. So we'll see. I think there's nothing to see here. It's nice, I guess, to get an occasional update, but it's nothing that's going to get us excited or anything at this point.
Yeah, and the update from IndyCar Deep Throat. Toyota seems to have issues with certain agreements and outlines for the new OEM engine regulations. Toyota wants everything agreed upon with regards to new regulations around OEM before confirming. So basically, I asked, So things with Honda and Chevy have already agreed to maybe the issues for Toyota, and the response was sounds like it. So it almost feels like you have to scrap everything and start over.
Yeah, which you can't do because Honda and Chevy are already developing those engines to those specs. So you can't be changing the goalpost, so to speak, just for a third OEM. So it's almost like, IndyCar's going to lay out, these are the parameters of what you need to fill. And if Toyota's like, no, what about this? It's like, well, it's kind of too late because Honda and Chevy have already signed off and are already working on the specs for that new engine.
So that's the third OEM update.
Brought to you by Toyota.
Yes, brought to you by Toyota. All right, let's talk Iowa Speedway.
Let's.
Hy-Vee doubleheader weekend. So we have the official names of these races. We have on Saturday, the HyVeeDeals.com 250 presented by DoorDash. And on Sunday, the Hy-Vee Salute to Farmers 300 presented by Google. It's a mouthful, but the track looks great. They have those like suites set up that Hy-Vee has.
Hy-Vee
look
put
amazing.
Up, which they say are permanent, semi-permanent.
Yeah, they look pretty permanent.
Pretty impressive. Hy-Vee all over the place. I mean, they're fully backing this thing. Got DoorDash involved, got Google involved. The concerts, if you like country music, are top-notch both days, before and after each race. I saw, I think the Des Moines Register said something, they anticipate 30,000 per day.
Yes. Yeah, they're expecting a near sellout, 30,000 for each day. So the schedule for the weekend, as we get to that, and also what you need to know. So on Friday, 4:30 to 6, again, all these are Eastern time, Peacock practice. Then on Saturday, 10:30 to 11:45 qualifying. This will be they've done this in the past. So you get 2 laps. Lap 1 is for first race qualifying. Lap 2 is for second race. Pretty simple.
I like it, actually, because when it first started, I thought, well, that's going to be pretty similar, for lap 1 and lap 2, but far from it. I mean, you get a wiggle on 1 and you're starting way back, but you do a fine, lap 2, then you're going to be up front second race and vice versa. So I kind of like it. It goes pretty fast, which I don't hate. Sometimes, look, I love qualifying on road and street courses. Sometimes it drags.
Yes. Depending on the number of incidents, of course.
Yeah.
4 to 6 NBC broadcast. 4:06 green flag for race 1. Then on Sunday for the Hy-Vee Salute to Farmers 300 presented by Google. 3 to 6 NBC broadcast window. Green flag at 3:30 Eastern. Again on NBC, Peacock, IndyCar Radio, all the IndyCar Live for International, all the available outlets, same as always. 250 laps for race 1, 300 laps for race 2. And Ed Carpenter will be taking part this weekend in the 33 machine. Again, the 11 car, we don't expect to see that back. But that would have been J.R. Hildebrand, not entered into the race this weekend. And a couple of livery notes for you. Team Penske, Scott McLaughlin has a Freightliner livery that looks really, really cool. And then Ray Hall, Letterman Landing and Racing, will have Shield cleansers with Lundgaard. They'll have High Rock vodka with Graham Rahal, and then a red Hy-Vee car for Jack Harvey that looks really slick. And with that, we get into our 3 things plus some bonus things from Chad 200 on Twitter. There's a lot of good data here. So only 1 of 15 races have been won from pole. Dixon and Power, 7 poles, 13 top 5s, 261 laps led, 0 wins in 28 starts.
Ooh.
Newgarden, his last 8 Iowa finishes, second, first, 6th, 4th, 1st, 5th, 1st, 1,150 total laps led. So you get into how wild that is. Next highest on the list, Elio at 267. Rossi has led 4 laps in the last 7 races. Rahal 20, Daly 17, Dixon 5, Power 99, Pagenaud 98. Remember, Pagenaud won one of those in 2020 back when he was with Penske. So as far as the team laps led that he continues on with, so Penske 1,158 in the last 5 races that they've led. Arrow McLaren 86, Ray Hall 65, Ed Carpenter 38, Ganassi 23, Andretti 11. Remember, Andretti dominated this event for years,
right?
From 2007 to like 2014, roughly.
And coming off what was a disappointing weekend in Toronto, I expect Team Penske to have a great weekend this week.
Yes. So let's just pick two, since it is a doubleheader. Obviously, we're both picking Newgarden for one of them, right?
Yes, I'll take Newgarden for one. Not sure if it's Saturday or Sunday, but that's one of my picks. Who will you take for the second?
I'm going to go with Pato O'Ward.
Okay.
Who are you going to go with?
Man. Not a bad pick, actually. Until he wins a race, I feel like he's got to win sometime, just like Scott Dixon did last week. I'm going Alex Palou.
All right, I thought you were going to say Rossi for a second.
No, I've given up on Alexander Rossi.
All right, and with Iowa, so very important to make your fantasy picks this week because you could win tickets to any 2023 IndyCar race, a pair of tickets, the player who participates in IndyCar Fantasy Challenge with the highest combined score from the two races. We'll get a pair of tickets plus a 1-year subscription to Racer Magazine and a Racer goodie bag.
Nice.
Pretty cool prize. I actually had a good result. Good weekend in Toronto.
We were what, 2-3 or 1-2 or something like that?
2-3, I think.
Yeah. Now, my 500 picks didn't save, so I'm like 29th overall, but it was nice to have at least one solid week.
Yeah, for once, I felt like I actually did something, which was nice. Because I had a solid run of 20-plus worse finishes.
Now, is that in life or just in picks that you finally felt like you achieved something?
Wow, brutal.
I'm just asking. I just, maybe you have low expectations and that.
I expect to succeed.
Okay.
Just like anyone else.
Excellent. That's the spirit.
All right. Wow. Some fire over there. All right. Tony Kanaan, you see this? He tested a midget car on the dirt track at IMS.
Yeah.
Not sure if we'll see him in the race, but hey, it looked cool. And it's cool that he got to do that as they get ready for the BC 39 early in August. And did you see this, Justin? Kiffin Simpson moving teams in Indy Lights?
I did see that.
So leaving TJ Speed, he'll be with HMD. They'll have 6 entries this weekend at Iowa.
I'm kind of excited to watch the Indy Lights race at Iowa.
Yeah. They weren't in Toronto, so we get them back.
And it's their first oval. I think they're doing Gateway, too, I want to say.
And this basically, so you think the Alex Palou situation had a rift? Well, this one also seems to have had a rift between Simpson, who's, remember, a Ganassi development driver,
right,
now partnering with HMD for the rest of the season. So keep that in mind with everything there. IndyCar and IMS have named a new medical director. The former director, Dr. Jeffrey Billows, will retire at the end of the season. And Dr. Julia Visor, I believe that's how you pronounce her last name, first woman to hold either role in the series, and IMS will take over from him. So congrats to her and congrats to him on his upcoming retirement. A couple other notes to get to. Tom Blomqvist, I hope I said that correctly. He'll get a test in a Meyer-Shank IndyCar team. He's been with their sports car team. And that will
probably nothing for next year. It sounds like Pagenaud and Castroneves will be in those two seats next year, but potentially for 2024, maybe. We'll see how that test goes.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. It doesn't say anything as far as a track that this will take place at. Now, would not surprise me if that track was Mid-Ohio, simply because, well, that's the home track for Meyer-Shank.
Yes.
That would be my guess. Chip Ganassi at the MLB All-Star Game.
I saw that and got
Jim
some
Aiello,
TV time.
Former IndyCar beat writer for the Indy Star, tweeting that out. But yeah, I did not expect that to happen.
Yeah, we'll take it.
All right, tweets of the week time, and we have several. A lot of good stuff. Tony Kanaan, welcome teammate. That was from the contact between Rossi and Rosenqvist. I won't like this, tweeted, can't believe that the IndyCar race is only being streamed behind a $5 paywall. What a ripoff. I'll never give in to the man. Now, excuse me while I spend $45 on White Castle that's being DoorDash from 2 blocks away. And this from Marshall Pruitt. Cost of 1 gallon of gas down the street from where we live, $5.49. Cost of 1 month of the streaming service required to watch Sunday's IndyCar race, $4.99. And then the gif of the woman shouting at the cat thing, that meme is a gif of that. So Yes, that is how we feel about that.
It's interesting how people are selective in what they complain about, what they have to spend their money on. It's $5.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I mean, you can't even get a Starbucks drink besides black coffee for much
Correct.
cheaper than $5.
Even most gourmet coffee now is $5 and above.
And one other note I did not get to, but this is wild. This from Marshall Pruitt of Racer.com. An IndyCar team could be Porsche's 963 GTP customer team, and not who you would think, AJ Foyt Racing.
Wow, that'd be cool.
So
I do think it would help AJ Foyt Racing to branch out into other racing disciplines.
So they're apparently close to becoming Porsche's second IMSA customer for 2023. If the deal goes through, it'd be spearheaded by J.R. Hildebrand.
Would it be based in Texas or Indiana?
Does not say.
Because as you know, AJ Foyt Racing in two different places. Part of the reason why they struggle. One team is in Texas, one team is in Indy, and the third team, did we ever figure that out where the third team was? One of the two.
I would guess in
I don't know what to
Indy?
guess.
I really don't know. I have no clue.
I have no idea. Before we move forward, wanted to do this this weekend.
Yeah.
Sage Karam returns to Pocono Raceway with Xfinity, and there's a great story on speedsport.com about both the Sage Karam returning and his issues with Noah Gragson. I think it was at Road America they came to blows, and basically tying in that issue and incident with the 2015 incident, of course, that killed Justin Wilson at the IndyCar race in Pocono. And if you remember, it was Sage Karam's debris from his car that made contact with the helmet of Justin Wilson that ultimately took his life one day later. So Sage Karam, commenting on that and said, and I think he's done this already. I think he said, when I get there, I'm just going to take a ride around on my bike around the track and kind of, reminisce and maybe exercise some demons and stuff like that. But it'll be emotional for Sage Karam to return to what was a very, very sad day for IndyCar.
And thankfully, the race will air after IndyCar, USA Network, 6 Eastern, for the Xfinity Series race on Saturday. So no conflict with IndyCar if you want to catch them.
Excellent.
All right. We've done Tweets of the Week. We've done everything else. It's time for, I think, our favorite segment, Random Split Era Driver of the Week time. And who is it this week? We're going to 2003, and we're going to go to the IndyCar Series. Last week we went kart. This week, the Indy Racing League. Indy Racing League, excuse me. But it was actually, it adopted the IndyCar Series name in 2003. It was called the IRL IndyCar Series. It was. It's true. But we're going to go to Scott Mayer. I've heard of him. No, PDM Racing. Yes, absolutely I have. Scott Mayer, born in 1964, Franklin, Wisconsin. He participated in the first 3 races of the 2003 IRL IndyCar Series season for PDM Racing. We know what PDM is? Poor Dumb Mechanics. Correct. It was a racing team in IndyCar and USAC Silver Crown owned by Paul Diatlovich, and was always a low-budget team and affectionately or unaffectionately dubbed Poor Dumb Mechanics by one of its former owners. But Scott Mayer, in true Poor Dumb Mechanics fashion, he crashed in all 3 of his races in 2003. They were at Homestead, Phoenix, and Motegi Twin Ring in Japan. Did not qualify for the 500 that year. He actually tried to qualify for Chicagoland the year before for PDM Racing and did not qualify. Finished 31st in points in 2003 and then tried to qualify for the Indianapolis 500 with AJ Foyt in 2005 and did not. After that, it was a couple years messing around in the WeatherTech Sports Car Series in the mid-2010s. Did a Sprint Cup race in 2012 with Inception Motorsports. Watkins Glen. Yeah, finished 18th. That's not too bad, but claim to fame now, his son Sam races stock cars, was signed by JR Motorsports, which is owned by Dale Earnhardt Jr., was signed by as a 15-year-old for the 2018 season, won back-to-back championships in the NASCAR K&N Pro Series East Series in 2019 and ARCA Menard Series
in 2020. So maybe we will see Sam in stock cars at some point. But that's Scott Mayer, this week's Random Split Era Driver of the Week for PDM Racing, which is a treasure trove of Random Split Era Drivers of the Week.
Absolutely.
We often go to the pipeline of PDM Racing for our feature.
Ed Carpenter once drove for PDM.
One of the few that people have actually heard of.
And Sam Hornish Jr.
I can't believe you heard about Scott Mayer.
Yeah, of course I've heard of him. 2003 IRL. I mean, that is fully in my wheelhouse.
It's tough. Like when you get into the early 2000s, like 2003, 2004. That's when it becomes you and I, as obscure as they are, we know them all.
Yes.
Right
now, if you
give us Richie Hearn and Buddy Rice. I mean, Buddy Rice Indy 500 winner. It's tough, but Jimmy Kite and Alex Barron and it's great. Billy Boat, Robbie McGee. Oh, it's amazing.
Tiago Medeiros. He also raced for PDM. There's a lot of great names, blast from the past on that team. You got to go. You have to be sneaky. You got to go like IRL in the 90s,
late 90s to 2002.
Cart between, not. It has to be like 2000 or before.
Yeah. I'm surprised we've gotten this far. I mean, I shouldn't be surprised, but I have, because it's a narrow couple years that you can choose from.
You could also sneak in some Champ Car like 2006 or 7. There'd be some people I definitely would not have heard of.
True.
And I even watched some of those races. So
maybe next week I'll do some digging.
Next week we'll be back. We'll have a recap of the doubleheader this weekend at Iowa Speedway. Hey, plus we'll be celebrating 5 years of the podcast.
Holy
next week.
Smokes.
Yeah. I don't know what we're going to do to celebrate, but just pointing that out next week.
Send us money.
Yeah. Next week is 5 years of the podcast. For Justin Kinney, I am Caleb Hash. Thanks for joining us once again on another edition of New Track Record Podcast.
Podcasts by Federated Media.